Hello everyone, my name is Patrick. I'm making this commentary to talk about a very sensitive subject to some people. I'll be talking about how to convince your parents to let you play Call of Duty. I'm making this video family friendly, and so feel free to show this video to your parents if you feel that's necessary, because a while ago when I had this issue, which I'll talk about later, I found a lot of other videos with language that I would not want my parents to see. Before I begin, let me quickly introduce you to who I am and why I'm qualified to talk about this subject. My parents used to be strongly against any violence in video games. They raised my two older brothers in a violence-free household. Even when they turned 18, they weren't allowed to play violent games until they moved out. My mom is a pastor and my dad is a veteran, so you can imagine they would be against this. When I came along, the rules weren't any different, but around the time I was 12, I wanted to have the ability to play these games, because as a lot of you know, most games these days, other than sports games, have some kind of violence in them. I knew that if I wanted to change my parents' minds, I couldn't just ask them, I had to show them that I was responsible. So what I did was I started to be more helpful and respectful around the house for about a month without mentioning anything about the games. What I did next was I made a PowerPoint presentation. It was a simple presentation about 10 pages long without any fancy effects or pictures. I mentioned points such as when people thought Looney Tunes made children evil because anvils were dropped on the coyote's head and he was repeatedly blown up. I also mentioned how I could make a contract with my parents saying that if my grades dropped or I started having bad behavior, they would have the right to take the game away from me. I'm not going to show you my exact presentation because it shows that you care for the topic if you make your own. The bottom line is I researched a lot and came up with a solid presentation. One night after dinner, I asked my parents if they could gather around the living room, and I started presenting. I was open up to any questions they had, and I remained patient and respectful even if they were skeptical. It took 2 weeks for them to finally come up with a decision, and they said no. But it was alright. I knew that maybe I should wait until I become 13 in a few months and show how responsible I am as a teenager. A few months passed and I put together another presentation. This time it had scientific evidence on the effects of violence on the teenage brain. Because my parents saw how determined I was and how responsible I had been, they agreed to let me try these violent games for 2 weeks, and they would see how I managed and whether they would let me keep playing them. I stayed respectful and responsible, and they let me play most violent games, including Call of Duty. I am still respectful and responsible to this day, so I don't let these games desensitize me. The reason why I think Call of Duty isn't a terrible game is because a lot of parents have a misconception about the violence. They seem to think that whenever you or a teammate dies, it is a long, gory, and bloody death that is disgusting. It is not at all, because the multiplayer is made to be fast-paced, and a lot of the time you don't even know what's going on. A death only lasts about 2 seconds until you can respawn, and blood does not pour out of your body. In fact, the only red that you see is when you get hit. Your screen turns a bit red to let you know where you're being attacked from. The game is also rated M because of drug reference. In my opinion, this shouldn't be on the list, because the only reference to the entire campaign is a 3-second segment where someone is smoking a cigarette in the background. Your character or other characters are never under the influence of drugs. The only other bad thing in the game is bad language. This mostly appears during the campaign, so if you don't want your child to be exposed to this language, just don't let them play the campaign, but the multiplayer has little to no language at all. So that's why I feel Call of Duty is not a terrible game for children who show they are responsible and respectful. Feel free to use any of these tips I mentioned in this video. Don't forget to leave a like if this helped you out, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Oh, and by the way guys, the reason I might sound sluggish in today's commentary is because I went to one of my high school's home football games last night, and we were playing the Canadians. Yes, we were actually playing a high school team that flew in from Canada. They might have wasted their time though, because we whooped them, eh?